15 years of living out my dream job. This was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to coach college basketball, and I was blessed to be able to show up to a job every single day and never feel like it was work. It's an unfortunate thing that mental health is becoming so much more prevalent across the board, but I also love to see that we're so much more willing to talk about it and address it and find the tools and the resources to address it and find, opportunities to kind of break through those challenges. Definitely think over the years, coaches have started to realize the pressure that's on these kids. And when they get there, gives them some space to take it all in and then help them develop the strategies on how to process this whole new level of pressure after the game, win or loss. Let's give ourselves, our brain, space to actually process, what we just went through. Just went through a battle. Let's self-reflect and let's get better as a result of it.
Self-evaluation is crucial for all young athletes.
Self-evaluation is so important, and it is not just something that we as parents should be talking to our kids about. We need to model it too.
What is Rematch?
It might just simply be bringing value to a parent who's just trying to capture moments and kind of create sports scrapbook, right, of their kid's sports journey, right? And they're just trying to document those moments along the years. Or maybe it's going to serve a parent who's trying to support their kid in their dreams of playing at the next level.
Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Fighting for Overtime podcast. I'm your host, Coach Tony, and like I say, we always like to bring you different and intriguing individuals when it comes to the world of youth sports, whether they're parents, whether they're coaches, whether they're tech innovators, whether they're former players. And tonight we have special guest Hanna Howard. She's a CEO at Rematch U.S. And let me just tell you something. Her background speaks for itself. She's a Division I former basketball player at the University of Portland. And she's also coached for 15 years at elite programs such as Fresno State and TCU. And she has the trifecta here. She's the perfect perspective as an athlete, a coach, a parent, and now as a tech developer. Hanna, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Oh my gosh. Thanks so much, Tony, for having me. Excited to be here.
I mean, listen, I was excited, speaking about, this is going to be labeled tech meets talent, because you go from two ends of the spectrum, right? A talented individual in so many different ways, and all of a sudden now an innovator in the tech market, right?
Yeah. Well, it's quite a journey, and you never know exactly what that path is going to look like. But sports has always kind of been a North Star for me. From a young age, sports was that constant thing in my life. And it's pretty cool that, all these years later and all the things that I've done along the way, I still find myself, around the game and getting to be involved in kind of a new, innovative way.
Never goes away. Sports never go. It always becomes a fixture of our lives. And now you're a parent, right? So you went through all these different stages. But before we get into any of that, and as always, make sure you're following and liking this podcast on any format that you're listening to. I want to get right into the app that you have created, because as a coach myself, I coached for over 15 years, and I used a bunch of different technology, probably I would say over the last maybe 5 years, because it just started to become prevalent. And I coached soccer, and we would record everything. We would have specific apps and videos. But now this is completely different. This is it's like the next stage. So what is actually Rematch? What is it? And how would you say it's revolutionizing youth sports?
Well, here's the thing, let me start from the perspective of a parent and the parents that are listening. Like, I can certainly attest to the concept of app fatigue. Every time our kids seem to sign up for a new sport, or, they go to a next school, you're told, okay, download this app, add yourself, do all the things, right? So first of all, I just want to say that I can relate to that. But what we wanted to do with Rematch, and what Rematch is a platform and is a tool that is easy to use first and foremost. And when parents try it, they're going to find comfort right out of the gate, because it's easy to use. It's not complicated. It's not going to take you multiple times of having to dive in and try to figure it out. So, let me start with just that as a disclaimer for all the parents out there who do have that app fatigue syndrome. But so what is Rematch? Rematch is at its, essence, it's a platform to capture sports highlights, to share sports highlights, and to create a place of visibility for all athletes. When we look at kind of the sports pyramid, obviously, as you get up to that college level and to the professional level, your visibility opportunities increase in that space. But it doesn't mean that there isn't something to celebrate and be proud of and be seen at that youth level. And I think we'll get into it a little bit more about how things have changed kind of in the youth market. But building your personal brand, like whether you like it or not, it's a part of that journey in especially in sports. And what we have here with our app is a platform that can serve you in a lot of different ways. It could be simply for a parent who just loves to capture sentimental moments, right, and memories, and our technology. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about kind of some of our proprietary technology within the app. But you can just use it simply to capture highlights. And when we think about why Rematch versus just using, your iPhone, well, when you're on your iPhone, you've got to hit, record, hope something happens, and then you end your recording. But we are all guilty of it. I'm sure you could open up your app, photo app right now, and you would have tons of videos that, aren't of any real significance. And it's hard to then find that one moment where your kid did score that goal or, made that, incredible save or whatever that moment is. So it really allows that user to capture only the moments that we want through through our flashback auto rewind technology. But, you also think about Rematch not only in the place of capturing highlights, and there's a lot more of other features that we can get into, or users encourage you to download it. It's a free app, so get in there and get familiar with it. But the other side is, again, creating a place of visibility. So you've got the vertical around the capturing technology, and then you've got the vertical around enjoying content. So going to our gallery, going to the clips section, and you can just get lost in watching great highlights. It's not just your own content. When someone captures content captures highlights on Rematch, it's a public platform. So think of it kind of like a YouTube, but just dedicated to highlights captured through the Rematch app. So, that's the direction we're going. People don't tune in and watch full game footage, whether it's, your kid's full game streamed, or it, watching, Premier League soccer. What do people do? They watch the highlights. And this is a great place where you can land and just kind of get lost in consuming great moments captured by parents like yourself.
So true, because number one, I love the app fatigue. That's so true, because I think we all have app fatigue, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every time you turn around, you have a different app. But I love the way you kind of presented that, because it this is something that can be used just not for the person who wants to create the highlight reel for the recruiter, but also just an average mom and dad who just want to, like you said, want to record the finer moments of their child's journey. And we mentioned about highlights, and that's what nobody watches the full thing. We always talk about it, right? That's even doing this right now. People are going to watch the snippets that I post and be like, hey, do I really want to listen to these two talk for a half hour? I don't know. Right. But the thing that I will say, which is, I've thought fascinating, and I want you to respond to this, is, the intricacies of, this app. And we talk about social media being a monster.
Yeah.
Well, this is, how is this more intricate and powerful than a social media reel?
Yeah. Well, I think it can go hand in hand, again, if that's what your motivation is. So when a parent captures a game, so let's say, Tony, you're on the sideline filming, your kid. At the end of the game, you've now captured, let's say, 8 quality highlights, because again, you're not hitting record and hoping something happened. You're not capturing it until you actually see something that is worthy of being captured. So now when the game's over, what the Rematch app is going to do is it's going to create that highlight reel for you. So it's going to take those, let's say, 8 highlights, and it's going to mash it together into, let's say, a minute and 40-second highlight reel. And And, you can slide things out if you don't want, something that's in there, you can remove it. But instantly when that game's over, Tony, you can go to the share button and you can instantly load that highlight reel right to your social media platforms. For me, I don't do that step as much. My kids are, 11 and 13. I'm not quite at that point where, I'm trying to promote their skill set or whatnot on social. But I instantly, after every game, hit that share button and I text my parents who live on the West Coast. And now my parents can instantly see their grandkids, highlights of their soccer game. I also try to capture not just for my son's soccer team. He plays for FC Dallas here in the Metroplex. And, there's a lot of parents who can't always make it to the games. So when I'm capturing, I'm also kind of capturing from the lens of the highlights of the team. And I can put that same summary, that highlight reel into the team text thread. And instantly parents who, aren't at the game can instantly kind of relive the action and the moments that were captured through the app. So, I just think the versatility that comes from it doesn't, limit you to just a social media, pipeline. It can be just from, staying organized with your content to being able to share it with loved ones or family or friends or other parents on the team.
That's what's great about it, because in today's world, right? Everybody's busy, and you're not a bad parent if you can't make a game. I know everybody tries, right? We try. People have side hustles. They have 2 jobs. They have 3 jobs. So they try to do everything they can. Maybe somebody's disabled. Maybe you have, older parents who they can't travel, right? This is huge for them. I've always said that, this is the way technology is great when we use it the right way. So bravo for being able to be used that way, because it is definitely huge. It really is.
And again, like, you and I talk about, like, we don't have time necessarily to go back and watch that live feed. And, there's a lot of, technology out there, and I think there's space for all of it. But those cameras that are on the sideline, whether it's in the gym or on the field, that are capturing the full game, I'm going to be honest, I love my kids to death, but I'm not going to sit down, at 8:30 at night when I finally am ready to, like, shut it down and watch a full game. It's just, that's what the coach is going to use that game film for. There's a tactical purpose for that full game footage. I spent 15 years looking at game footage, but as a parent, like, I want to just get in and see what are the moments that, my kid's going to tell me about, or those special highlights. So I think it really does serve in that space, just from an efficiency with time.
No, I agree, 100%. And you just said 15 years, and I want to get into some youth sports and some of your experiences before and now, because again, this is what we're trying to do here. And then we're going to come back and we'll come back to how you get the app, how you get it, how you get involved, and make sure everybody gets that information. Again, we're speaking to Hanna Howard, CEO at Rematch U.S. It's a fantastic app that's going to take every single moment of your child's journey when it comes to technology and any sport that they're playing. But over the years in youth sports, it's changed considerably, especially from this technology standpoint. It's changed. So in your opinion, you've got a trifecta. You've been a player, you coach, you have a child, you have 2 children in sports. What would you say has been the biggest change, to date right now?
Well, there's no question. It's social media. I mean, whether you use it, like it, believe in it, it's not going anywhere. And the reality is it's a powerful platform. And, there's something to be said about leveraging, the opportunity and the impact that social media can bring. Now, I can also tell you that, my kids aren't going to have social media anytime soon. I'm going to try to keep them from that as long as I can. But it's a tool, and there's something for us to be able to leverage. But how we do it, how we approach it is, I think, where we as parents have to be really, really intentional. I'm blown away by the parents who are seeing, the potential impact and influence that social media can have on, their young sports star. And, people can have their different opinions about it, but I have respect for those parents who are managing a social media account of their kid. It's not their kid doing it, right? It's the parent who's managing it, but they're building a brand, and personal branding is key. And especially, we all know the statistics around, 1% of high school athletes, make it to the college level and what, whatever it is. But regardless what those percentages might be, if you have a dream, if you're motivated by, continuing that sports journey, you probably should at some point, look at how am I building my personal brand, and social media is where you've got to put some focus and some real investment in time around.
I agree. I love that you said that, because I say it all the time. Bravo to the parents that are actually controlling these accounts. Like, and I love it. Like, I have a lot of, when I'm on TikTok, and I have a lot of players that'll like some of my videos and comment. When you go to their account, it lists, it says on there, it says control button. And I love it.
I do too.
It's huge, right? I mean, look, we can
and let me say this too, Tony.
Sure.
In my journey of kind of watching social media trend, 10 years ago when I was coaching, and you're recruiting, and so you're building these relationships with these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, right? And you follow them on social media, and because you have to, right? If you're not, you're behind. But man, that was painful. There was a time where, man, I just did not want to be following those kids. So I can appreciate the evolution that has come, and how I think parents are being more intentional about how these platforms are being used by their kids, especially at that recruitable age. And, you're always selling something, and let's make sure that what you're selling is putting your best foot forward. And so it's a neat evolution to see now where those platforms are versus maybe where they were, 8-10 years ago.
The key word that you keep saying that I love and I say is intentional.
Yeah.
Like, that word is huge. Where is your intent? Where does it lie? And that's what's huge about it. Like you said, I mean, just in the 5, 8, 9 years, I mean, it's changed drastically. Now, you didn't have social media like this when you were a D1 player.
No.
So as a former D1 player, were there any times, and you didn't even have social media, so you didn't have to worry about that part, but were there any times that you were like, man, you know what? I'm just ready to shut it down. I can't, this is just too much.
Yeah, I think it's a natural reaction, and I can say definitely, it's kind of hard to think back, 20 plus years ago at this point. But I can certainly say that, it's not easy. And when you put so much, you sacrifice so much to accomplish your dreams, to get to where, this goal of, being a college athlete, right? That when you get there, I think it's human nature to kind of, right? And you kind of get a little bit of complacency. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And we would talk about it a lot with our, players in our recruiting process when I was coaching, is it's okay that you're going to have that feeling, but now how do you respond to it? Like, because it's only going to get harder. Everything that you've done to date is, credit to you. You've done an incredible amount to get to this point, but guess what? It only gets harder. It only gets more competitive now that you've made it. So let's honor that, a little bit of space of kind of taking a breath and feeling accomplished. And now let's refocus and find those new strategies to find that motivation to get back into the grind. And I think that's one of the areas that, I don't know that I was probably well supported or my peers were probably well supported in my generation. But I definitely think over the years, coaches have started to realize the pressure that's on these kids. And when they get there, like, gives them some space to like take it all in, and then help them develop the strategies on how to process this whole new level of pressure and, expectation that comes with now playing at that college level.
It's huge. And it's just going to continue to keep getting bigger and bigger, and the stressors are going to be coming more and more on their
Oh,
shoulders.
yeah. When you add the
Yeah.
amount of money these kids are
Yeah.
now, being presented with, it's like it stresses me out. Like, I mean, we got a job to do, right? And now
Crazy.
these kids have a whole different level of stress around the NIL market.
And it keeps getting younger. Like it started college, now it's high school, now it's grade school. You see
Mhm.
7th, 8th graders starting to, I'm committing to high school. Why? Like, where is this? And it's just going to continue to grow. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why, like you said earlier, when we talked about parents running social media accounts, that's why the parental guidance in youth sports is going to be more greater than ever needed right now, because
Yeah.
of the different avenues that these kids have the opportunity to travel. Now, one of those words with stress comes burnout.
Mhm.
And we hear that all the time. I seen it a lot as a coach. I seen it as a parent of 3 kids who played sports. I'm sure you saw it as a player,
Yeah.
as a coach, maybe even right now. But looking at it as a whole, and it's a pretty general question. There's no right or wrong answer, but do you
Yeah.
feel like the kids of today are overworked? And if so, what age would you say that starts at?
I mean, I think the answer is yes and no. I think
Yeah.
our generation, Tony, we were multi-sport athletes, right? And you could be a multi-sport athlete for much of your youth and still ultimately kind of prevail or shine in, that chosen sport, right? And I wish in a lot of ways that was still the case. And I'm not saying that you have to be singularly focused, at X age if you have goals or dreams of playing at the college level and beyond. However, the reality is if you aren't really intentional about the development within that sport, the competition is fierce, right? And so I think that there is an element that's overworked as far as like, are we doing it the right way? Are we doing it smart? I look at these, young football athletes, and man, you see the training regimen that they're going through, and it's inspiring because I mean, this is real work that these, young athletes are putting in. I just choosing football, it's applicable to any sport. But do you have the right people around you who are building a program that are monitoring the progression of how you are developing? You could be, focused, let's say, on football or basketball, but are you continuing to work on your mobility and utilizing, mobility training or agility training? So there's a way to be smart about it. It's not just simply grind. Now, what I do think is a problem around kind of the overwork space is I think these kids play too many games. There's too much put on their body. I, of course, coaching basketball as long as I did, I spent summers upon summers in gyms recruiting or, evaluating players. And you're looking at kids who are playing, 60 plus games over the course of, a couple of weeks. It's too much. It's too much. So I do think that that's where, we probably are seeing more of the burnout is on the competition and the amount of playing versus necessarily, a training regimen, a skill development. I think that I think it is kind of the name of the game now. You do have to develop in those ways.
Yeah, I think you're so right. It's like spot on it. The burnout I say is it's within the amount of games and the amount of practices and the amount of training that you're actually doing. Like you said it in our generation. Yeah, I went from soccer to baseball to basketball, right? We didn't and now not only is everything a year-round sport, but it's the not just the competition, but the commitment to become that prime athlete is greater than it's ever been. Now you've coached kids at multiple levels.
Mhm.
So what would you say are any early signs of either burnout or mental fatigue that
Yeah.
you either have seen or that you would look for as a coach?
Well, I think I'm big on body language. I feel like I've got a good eye for evaluating and not missing kind of the unspoken cues, right? So, I think there's a lot to be said about how somebody carries themselves, right? And, like I said earlier, you're always selling something, and, that could be interpreted or applicable in a lot of different ways. But what's that joy level? What's that excitement level? What's the are they showing up with, an attitude and an energy of excitement and drive, or are they showing up like, dang, this is just another day in the gym, And yeah, of course we all are going to have those days, right? But when you start to pick up on the pattern of that, that's where we, as coaches, we've got to recognize it. Now, I also will say, I'm so thankful that, there's so much more focus and attention and education around mental health. No coach should feel the burden or the responsibility to be, a mental health professional and take care of their athletes on a professional level, right? But you can be that advocate, right? You can be that person who, what, I'm seeing something. Let's spend some time here and let's have some conversations. Let's kind of see what's going on. And as soon as that, that feeling is, I think we got something going on here. Don't take it upon yourself to try to solve it, unless you, have that sort of training. But find the resources that are out there. Find, every college campus now, has resources. But it's not to say that they aren't also available in that youth space. It might take a little bit more work, but I just think we've got to have eyes open, ears, or listening. And again, not try to take on the responsibility to solve a kid's problem or try to just, coach them through it. It's not always that easy. Right. And, I think it's something that, it's an unfortunate thing that mental health is becoming so much more prevalent across the board. But I also love to see that we're so much more willing to talk about it and address it and find the tools and the resources to, address it and find, opportunities to kind of break through those challenges.
No, it's great that you mentioned that every professional team has a sports psychologist. And every team has resources, whether you play for a Division I, Division II, Division III, doesn't matter. Even in high school, you have your school counselor, right? They're trained professionals in order to help you. That you were spot on. It's like, look, let's talk about it, see what's going on, but that's so in what direction to push them into what area of expertise that you need. So I think that's huge. Now, being a parent yourself, let me ask you this, what has been your biggest challenge to date when it's come to youth sports at such a young age?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. So, my kids grew up in the gym, right? They understand basketball at a very high level. It's not their number one sport of choice. They both lean more towards soccer, although they play basketball, but they know the game, right? So they learn from a very young age how to see sport through kind of mom's coaching eye, right? And they were exposed to it in that way. So, fast forward, I'll talk about my son who's 13 years old and, he's a great soccer player, but he's a perfectionist. He overthinks everything, right? And, that's part his, it's, nature versus nurture, right? I think it's a combination of both. I think it's how he is as that firstborn child, but it's also because I think he knows sports. He knows, the IQ around sports on probably a level that most kids his age don't think about the game the way he does. But in turn, he struggles with his self-talk, right? And it's something for me as a parent, that I'm not great at managing that journey for him because I've always been one of those athletes that, I kind of consider it. Somebody asked me years ago, what would you consider your superpower? It took a little bit of time for me to think about it. And I said, I think it's my self-talk. Like how I communicate to myself is always, in a positive and encouraging way. And now I've got a son who really struggles with his self-talk, right? And he overthinks everything. And so now I'm in this position, as a coach, but my job right now is to be a parent. And how do I love and support and help my son navigate these, mental challenges that he has around sports? And it's not easy. And I don't claim to, have the solution. I tell him that I'm transparent. Like, here's, buddy, what I know. Here's, we can't say those things to ourselves. We can't, focus on that missed goal, that happened, 45 minutes ago. The game ended 10 minutes ago, and you're still talking about the missed shot that you had in the first half. Like, man, we can't fixate on that, but it's a challenge. But I think what is really important for parents, and it's, I certainly have to remind myself constantly, but, I'm thankful that my background has kind of helped kind of train me in this space, is our job is to be that neutral mindset. The more neutral, the more consistent we can be in how we show up for our kids. It doesn't mean we aren't going to have some highs and have some lows along the way, but I think it's our job to really model kind of that neutral, level consistency, and just let the emotions that our kids are going to have, they can bounce up and down, but we're going to stay steady, in the middle, and support them as they navigate those feelings that, isn't inevitable. I tell my kids all the time, feel your feelings. Like, I never want you to not feel the emotions and feel the feelings of, what happens on the field or on the court or off, not necessarily even in sport. But then how do we react to those feelings, right? How do we react to those emotions? Do we get fixated on them like I'm talking about with my son? Or do we acknowledge them? We give them space, and then we move on from them, right? And I think that's our job as parents, to model that as best we can. And it's not an easy task, but the more we can do it, the better our kids are going to be.
Definitely not easy. To be a neutral voice, it is not easy. Especially when you're coaching your kid at the same time. So it's definitely ask my 25-year-old daughter that. We had some battles, but
oh yeah.
yeah.
And also too, Tony, think about, like, let's not forget, like, the way the U.S. society, American society has trained us is when we spend money, we want something in return, right? There's a value exchange that we, our culture kind of cultivates. Well, guess what? We're spending a lot of money for our kids to participate in youth sports. It's not like when we were kids, and our parents put us in the YMCA and, it cost whatever it cost, or maybe it didn't even cost anything. But, parents are spending thousands of pounds, thousands of dollars for their kids to participate. And, I'm not saying that it gives you're not entitled to act, out of sort as a result of the money that you're investing, by no means. But I also understand that, with the investment, you want to see your kid play, right? You want to see them achieve their goals. You want to see the return on the investment. And I think that often can be one of the things that kind of lets parents, lose their composure, is kind of around that space.
Oh yeah. When money comes into play, everything changes. Everything changes, right? 100%. I have two quotes that I want to kind of close in on this, and then we're going to talk some more about the app before we get out of here. And I think going right into the second one, because you mentioned about the money aspect, the quote that I have is, coaching college is like running a business. That quote to you, your thoughts and your meaning behind that. What do you think?
Oh, it's I couldn't agree more. And I can tell you, for me, it wasn't until kind of the latter part of my coaching career that I started to kind of have a mindset shift around the profession. And I started to recognize, what we were doing coaching at, the college level, especially when I'm talking about being at TCU, coaching in the Big 12, it wasn't as much about the X's and O's as it was, we're running a multi-million-dollar business, right? There is a lot that goes into, and a lot of money and resources and, human capital around the college level. And I'm really thankful that I started to recognize that late in my career because, when I, got let go in 2022 and was kind of at that point of like, okay, do I continue to stay in this profession, or is this maybe the right time with my kids getting older? Like maybe it's time to make a career change. I had the confidence to make a career change because I recognized the transferable skills that I had developed in my coaching career and knew with full confidence those skills apply to the business world. And I can step into that arena and be confident with, the skills that I had developed through the coaching profession. So 100% college athletics is a business. And anybody who tries to tell you it's not is not speaking the truth.
It's definitely changed. It's definitely changed. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
100%. Now, I really like this one because I think this kind of sums up everything we've talked about today. And the quote is, self-evaluation is crucial for all young athletes.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that, I said earlier, I try to encourage my kids, like, feel your feelings, honor what you're feeling, give space for it, process it, and then we move on from it. Self-evaluation is so important. And it is not just something that we as parents should be talking to our kids about. We need to model it too. We've got to self-evaluate. Man, I just acted crazy on the sideline. What triggered that? Why did I just lose, myself on the sideline? Let me self-reflect and see what those triggers were. But, one of the things that we instituted when I was coaching, and I do the same thing with my son, who's 13, is when our athletes, when I was coaching college, when they would walk into the locker room, they would turn their phones in, right? So when they arrived in the locker room pre-game, I think it was 90 minutes, maybe before the game, phones got put away, put in a basket, everybody's phones get taken away. And those phones wouldn't be given back to the players until 30 minutes after the game. So whether it was a home game, they'd have to do their, post-game recovery, or, we're on the road, you'll get your phone back on the bus. And, that wasn't to limit them from being able to, communicate necessarily with family or anything like that, but it was to create some intentionality around self-reflection. Certainly going into the game, let's get focused. Let's knock out all that noise that could be a distraction. But after the game, win or loss, let's give ourselves, our brain, space to actually process, what we just went through. We just went through a battle. Let's self-reflect and let's get better as a result of it. And so I try to do the same thing with my son. When we are leaving the field, he doesn't get his phone. That phone stays with me until we get home and we feel like we've processed and can really move on at that point.
I love that. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy.
No.
Especially nowadays, because everybody is tied to technology, right?
Yes. Yes.
But no, I think it's huge because it allows, like you said, it allows your brain to function the way it was supposed to, and not, not staring at a screen. And because that's the other thing that, about social media, about technology, is sometimes it gives you, there's certain aspects of it that trigger your mind to go in different directions, right? That's a great thing that you do. Congratulations for that. Good. Yeah. I mean, honestly, because as a coach, I that's fantastic. Now, bring it all back, right? Technology. Let's end on, why you started with Rematch. Like, how did this, let's just, like, how did it all come about? I know, obviously, we talked about how it works. We talked about, make sure it's an app. Just go to the app store, right? You go to the app store, you can download the app or the website, www.rematch. That's rematch.tv/.us.
You got it.
Right. You go there as well for anybody listening. So how did that come about?
So what really cool. So Rematch was founded over in France, with truly the premise, the founder, he was a successful, kind of mid-level soccer player, played, kind of semi-pro level. And he and his teammates, they weren't playing at the highest level, right? So they weren't, being covered by TV or highlights featured, in a media space. They couldn't ever find content of their games. Like, they wanted to see their plays. They knew that fans were in the stands, were capturing highlights, but the only thing that they could ever see was that tactical camera, right? And so what Pierre, thought of is, I want to create a platform where not only can content be captured, but where every athlete, regardless of the level that you are playing at, has a platform to be seen and celebrated, right? And it was truly about just creating kind of an even playing field for celebrating, sports. And they've had tremendous success over in France. They launched in 2019. COVID hit. Obviously, that kind of shut down sports for a while. So they really kind of attribute 2022 to really where they took off. And they've got over 600,000 users on the app over there. They're partnered with every single major sports federation, including the French Football Federation. They've got, partnerships with Nike as a result of, the visibility that this platform has. I think by the end of this summer, they're on track to eclipse 1 billion views through their platform and social media. So, some investors based down in Austin were introduced to Rematch actually out in Vegas at the CES Consumer Electronic I don't remember what the S stands for, but big global conference. And it took them, they say 5 minutes to say this app needs to be in the U.S. sports market, and it is going to change the game. And this will become the #1 sports highlights app in the U.S. sports market. They were instantly sold by what they saw. And so, I got the opportunity to be brought on, and 15 years of living out my dream job. This was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to coach college basketball, and I was blessed to be able to show up to a job every single day and never feel like it was work. I was living out a dream, right? And when you're lucky enough to be in that sort of a situation professionally, it's because you really truly believe in what you're doing, right? You understand, the why around what you're doing. You feel like you have a greater purpose. So for me to come into this position with Rematch and instantly see this is a, sports tech platform that I instantly connected to the value that it brings to the market, and again, as I said before, it might just simply be bringing value to a parent who's just trying to capture moments and kind of create, a sports, scrapbook, right, of their kid's sports journey, right? And they're just trying to, document those moments along the years. Or maybe it's going to serve a parent who's trying to support their kid in their dreams of playing at the next level, right? Or maybe it's the parent who's super intentional about getting involved in the NIL game and how do we build our social media brand, right? Like, I instantly saw that this is a platform that could serve so many different people in so many different ways, and it's free, right? And it's free, right? We are asked as parents to spend money here, there, everywhere, right? And to be able to have access to a platform that I truly believe will solve problems and support and bring value to its users, whatever their intention is around using it, but to do it in a way where they're not having to, stress over writing, or we don't write checks anymore, but, spend more money, in order to utilize it is something that I'm really, really proud of. Now, I will say we are getting ready to launch a premium version of the app, $4.99 a month. So again, we're not talking about, some large subscription. And simply the premium app is going to unlock, some more features. If your phone, we all are caught up in getting the newest and greatest iPhone, right? So we can now capture in, the highest of video quality. So now the premium app's going to allow you to capture at that same video quality, 4K quality that your phone is capable of doing. One of the features that I'm super excited about, Tony, I think all of us parents are going to just love this feature, is we've got a AI technology around filtering the audio. So now if I'm capturing a moment, but either I acting a little bit crazy with my celebration. I'm a little bit loud. My scream's a little bit obnoxious and it distracts from the moment. Or maybe I'm in a side conversation with another parent and, the audio's picking it up, rather than having to just mute the audio to eliminate, the distracting noise. It's got this AI technology. I don't really understand how all this stuff works, but it'll filter out the unwanted audio. It'll remove, my scream. It'll remove that conversation, but it'll still maintain the audio of the environment, the cheer of the crowd, the sound of the kids on the field celebrating. So I'm really, really excited to see, the premium app come. Again, all it's doing is taking your moments, your highlights, to the next level of quality. But all in all, I'm so proud of this platform. We've only been in the U.S. for 6 months, and we've really only been focusing primarily, from a marketing standpoint on the DFW market, but we're already getting organic growth nationwide, right? And we've already got 7,000 users on the platform. We're close to eclipsing 9 million views already, which tells us that we've got content. Parents are capturing highlights that people want to, watch and celebrate and enjoy. So I'm really, really excited about the momentum that we have around, our launch and the direction that we're going.
That's awesome. It really is. And in closing, I'll say the best thing about it, in my opinion, is where you say it's for all competitive levels, whether, it doesn't matter. This isn't just an NIL tool. This isn't just a recruiting tool. It's for everybody, and there's not many things out there when we talk about, let's circle back. We talked about how big of a business U Sports is and people investing all kinds of money in. This is great because this is for everybody. And, and that's what the thing is. Like everybody says with U Sports become a monster. It has. The biggest problem is a lot of the players that don't want to be travel players get forgotten about. And now with something like this, it's for everybody, which I think honestly is really fantastic. It really is.
It is. And let me just say this, Tony, as listeners of today's conversation are going and checking it out. Right now, we've got soccer and basketball live on the platform, fully launched. But by the end of this summer, we're going to have it unlocked to, all sports. So if you get on there and you don't see your sport that you want to be capturing for your kid, you can use the training or private mode in the meantime to just capture those moments. It won't go live onto the platform. So you can still use the app. But know that your sport, whatever your sport is, it's coming. It should be here real soon. So we're super excited to kind of unlock, its full potential. And again, being able to support every athlete at every level.
I love it. I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on. And I truly bring people on and things that align with my message, and just by you saying it's for everybody, it's for all level. That's what this is about. It's not just for one specific person or one specific division level, right? So that's fantastic. Again, Hanna Howard, CEO of Rematch, and again, it's a free app, right? From right now, of course there'll be a premium add to it, but again, to get started, to roll around with it, it is free, and it'll catch all your memories of moments, which aligns completely with what I always say. So Hanna, man, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. Really, really appreciate having this opportunity to connect with you.
Fighting for Overtime is a Rise and React media production. If you're looking to start a podcast, if you're looking to get some direction, hit us up, let us know. We'll help you out there as well. Again, for everybody, enjoy your time, memories and moments, and keep fighting that fight. Continue to fight in overtime to make your kid have the best experience that they can have when it comes to playing U Sports.